Here we are, born to be kings. We're the princes of the
Hey there, nation. Welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we are back with another edition of the Age of the Realms. So, we have taken a little bit of a time out with Age of the Realms, which is our series of Warhammer Age of Sigmar battle reports, in order to bring you Age of Mordheim, which is a series of Mordheim campaign using Age of Sigmar rules. But now that the second edition of Age of Sigmar has come out, we decided to go back to Age of the Realms, so that way you guys can see some good old-fashioned Age of Sigmar kind of battle reporting. So this is a 1,000-point battle. It is fought between my friend Scream of the Emo with the Motionless and White, which is a 1,000-point Nighthaunts army, versus yours truly with my Lords of Azure Skies, my 1,000-point Stormcast Eternal army. So that's right, ladies and gentlemen, my friend and I are going to throw it down at 1,000 points using the newly updated Age of Sigmar 2.0 rules, while also using some of the rules as well from the General's Handbook for 2018. So we're really psyched to try out this very new edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this army, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this on.
Assemble the army!
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, with the army list over with, let's go and talk about the scenario rules real quick. This scenario is called First Blood. It is the scenario that is offered up in the free-to-download rules edition for the second edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Pretty much, it's kind of like the old-fashioned, just Dawn of War type of scenarios that used to be around in the 8th edition of Warhammer Fantasy. Pretty much both sides battle it out until one player has no units left. Both units have 12-inch deployment areas. There's a space of 24 inches between both armies. When the battle ends, players calculate victory points by counting the number of wounds that they have killed from their enemy's units. If one player beats their opponent by 50% in victory points, it equals out to be a major victory. Otherwise, it ends up being a minor victory for the opponent that wins. Like I said before, all the victory points are based on the number of wounds that you inflict and kill in this game, so it's pretty straightforward. So with the scenario rules over with, let's go directly to the top of the battle plan and talk about what my plan is for this one. Alright, so here's an overview of the entire battlefield. Here's the battle plan. As you can see, we're fighting on a 4x4 table. The river is going to act as the barrier for this 4x4 table. So because we're playing at 1,000 points, As you can see, I am deployed on the near side of the table, while my opponent Screamo the Emo has deployed his forces on the far side of the table. Pretty much my plan is to have my opponent come across the battlefield towards me. He is playing a Nighthaunts army, which means that his shooting selections are very limited in his army, so because of that, there's no need for me to come across the battlefield to engage him, because it's not like he can shoot at me with anything. In fact, his army is very much close combat oriented, so it's in my favor just to kind of wait for him to come after me. My flanks are protected on the left and right hand side by forest, so that kind of helps me out. Well, it doesn't really help me out because my opponent is ethereal, so because of that, terrain doesn't really count for him, but in normal circumstances it helped me out. So pretty much my plan is to have my opponent come across the battlefield. I will him down with some long-range fire from my Judicators, as well as some lightning storms, as well as shooting from my Lord Relictor, as well as my Lord Celestant, and then eventually finish him off in close combat. And that's pretty much what I'm kind of going with on this one. So with the battle plan over with, we go directly to deployment. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about deployment real fast for my army. As you can see, my entire army is assembled in the center area. I have forests on either flanks protecting my flanks. Up in the front, I have the Judges, which is a unit of 10 Liberators, that will act as my main battle line to kind of protect the rest of my army in a phalanx formation. Right behind them, I have my 5 Judicators. Those guys are the, I believe those guys are, that's my jury. Those are the 5 guys who are armed with Sky Shock Bolts, I believe is what they're called. They're bows. And I also have the upgraded bow for my champion. Right behind them, I have Lord Grim, which is my Lord Relictor, as well as my General Lord Celestant Andrakoth, Lord Ios of Azure Skies. My other 2 units, the Witnesses, which are my unit of 3 Prosecutors, as well as my Executioners, which are my unit of 5 Paladin Retributors. Those guys are waiting off on the side because I'm going to use the Scions of the Storm ability for them to ride the lightning to come down and then teleport to the battlefield later on. And that pretty much makes up my deployment on this one. Across the table is my opponent Screamo the Emo's army for the Nighthaunts. In the back he has Lady Oleander, that's just her as general. That's the Mortarch of Grief, the new special character that came out for the Nighthaunts. Unfortunately, that miniature is not out yet, so because of that, my friend used a Coven Throne to act as a proxy for now because we're waiting for that model to come out. Right in the center he has his Morngul, that is Galabraid, make up the center of his army. On either side he's also flanked by 2 units of 5 Hex Wraiths. On the left hand side those are the Ghost Knights of Regun, and on the right hand side is the Mask of Red Death. The other 2 units of Hex Wraiths, which are his Ghost Riders as well as his Mask of the Black Death, those guys are waiting off to the side because they're going to use their teleportation ability from coming up from the underworld later on as well. And that pretty much makes up the deployment for both armies. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we roll off to the top of turn number 1 to see who goes first, to see who has the initiative for this battle. Alright, so I set the initiative on this one. I get to go first. So the very first thing I do is activate my hero phase. The first thing I do is I use my general's command ability of Staunch Defenders, so that way all of my units within 24 inches of my general gets +1 added to their saves, so long as they don't move. At the same time, I also cast the Battle Prayer ability onto my Judicators as well, giving their ability to inflict another additional attacks for every roll of 6 up they get to hit rolls. So it makes those guys a little bit deadlier in the shooting phase as well. And that pretty much makes up my hero phase on this one. So with the hero phase over with, we go directly to the movement phase, and as you can see in this photo, not much movement actually takes place. In fact, nothing at all. Pretty much my plan, like I said before, is to have my opponent come across the battlefield to me. I keep my Prosecutors as well as my Executioners, my Executioner, which are my Paladin Retributors. I keep those guys in reserve until my opponent comes closer to me. That way I can teleport those guys to attack either the back or the flanks of my enemy's formations, or plug them into any holes that might happen in my army when they need to start dying off. And so that's pretty much what I do. I just kind of wait there because I have no rush for him to come. He is going to have to come after me because I'm in no rush to go after him. So finally, we end up with the shooting phase. As you can see, my Judicators managed to kill 2 members of the Mask of Red Death over here on the right hand side, so that part is kind of awesome. They do have to take a Battle Shock test because they do lose casualties, but these are Nighthaunts, so they're undead, so Battle Shock really doesn't affect them all that much. I don't charge any of my units, so there's no combat phase, and that pretty much makes the Battle Shock phase. So pretty uneventful turn number 1 for the Stormcast Eternals. So that being said, we go to the bottom of turn number 1 for the Nighthaunts. Alright, so we go directly to the hero phase. The very first thing that Lady Oleander does is use her command ability, which basically gives no rest for the wicked, which means that anytime any one of her units have taken any injuries, one model comes back. So because of that, one of the Hex Wraiths does come back from the dead, so re-strengthens up this unit to 4 people. And that's pretty much about it. She doesn't really out of range for her spells, and she can't use her any whale ability yet, or any of her other hero abilities, because she's simply just out of range. So because of that, we go directly to the movement phase. And as you see in this photo, my friend Scream the Emo, he just starts sending his forces across the battlefield as quickly as he can. First of all, he just moves up 12 inches with his 2 units of Hex Wraiths that he originally started off with, so the Ghost Riders of Gun on the left-hand side, as well as the Mask of Red Death on the right-hand side, move up 12 inches. He does advance with Gallowbraid, his Mournfang, so he lands up on that little colorful forest there on my right-hand flank to kind of get himself set up for a charge later on. At the same time, he also advances with Lady Oleander as well, falling in right behind the Ghost Knights of Vergun there in the center. At the same time, my opponent also brings up his units from the undead. He deploys both his other remaining units of Hex Wraiths on the right hand side. Those are his Ghost Riders located on the right hand side, and on the left hand side that is his unit of 5 Hex Wraiths from the Mask of Black Death. And that pretty much makes up his move phase on this part. Alright, so here's a close-up of my right-hand flank. As you can see in the top, the Mask of Red Death, as well as the Ghost Riders and Midian on the right-hand side are getting ready to, go into a pincer attack on my right-hand flank, as well as the front of my formation. Here's a close-up of the center lines. On the back, that's Lady Oleander, as well as the Ghost Knights of her gun, occupying the statue next to the King in yellow. And those guys are getting ready to set themselves up for a long bomb charge to my front ranks. And here's a close-up of the left-hand flank where the Mask of Black Death is getting ready to charge on my left-hand flank. And this also makes up my friend Scream of the Emo's rest of his turn. He has no shooting ability yet because he's still out of range for his Wail of the Damned, so because of that, there is no shooting. During the charge phase, his dice just kind of abandoned him on this one. He rolled a bunch of 3s, 4s, and like 2s, like a lot of Snake Eye stuff. So because of that, none of his Hex Wraith units actually make a successful charge against my lines, which is kind of nice because it buys me ample of time, which also is also good too because if he rolls a 10 up on any one of his charge rolls, he gets an additional attack because that's how Nighthaunts roll now in the new edition of Age of Sigmar. So because of that, that pretty much makes up his entire turn. There is no combat phase since no one made successfully charge. There is no battle shock phase either. So because of that, we go directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Stormcast Eternals. So because of that, we go directly to the hero phase. As you can see, I use exactly the same command ability as before with Staunch Defenders. I'm not planning on moving, so because of that, that gives me +1 to my bonuses to my save for all the Stormcast units within 24 inches of my general. And I also use the Bless the Weapons Battle Prayer ability from Lord Grim onto my unit Adjudicators as well, so that way they get bonuses for every 6 up they get to hit with their weapons. Aside from that, I also cast Storm ability, Lightning Storm ability from Lord Grim as well. I use that to target the Mask of Red Death, which is within 12 inches across from him in the front. And as you can see, I managed to inflict 2 mortal wounds onto that unit, killing another member of the Hex Wraiths, which is not really much considering that these guys can come back from the dead with Lady Oleander's command ability. But at this point, I can take whatever I can get my hands on. So with the hero phase over with, we go directly to the movement phase. And as you can see in this photo, I decide to ride the lightning and bring my other 2 units in. My main core of my army stays exactly where they're located at. However, I do deploy my executioners, which are my Retributor Prime, my Retributor, Paladin Retributors. I deploy them on the right-hand side, right behind Gallowbraid, getting ready to set up a nice little long-distance charge into him. At the same time, I also deploy my Witnesses, which are my 3 Prosecutors, in the very back of the table, 9 inches away from Lady Oleander. And hopefully those 3 Prosecutors will be able to put the hurt on her as well. And that pretty much makes up my move phase on this one. Here's a close-up shot of my 3 Prosecutors from the Witnesses getting ready to charge into the back of Lady Oleander. I'm kind of excited. I'm not really sure exactly how my Prosecutors will do against this unit. My Prosecutors have not been very impressive in the past, so I'm just kind of debating to see exactly what happens when they charge into her. So hopefully they'll be able to cause some damage with her in both the shooting as well as combat phases, but at the same time though, it's still my Prosecutors and I don't know what to expect from these guys. And here's a close of my right-hand flank with my Executioners from my Paladin Retributors getting ready to charge into Gallowbraid the Mourngold. Hopefully with enough damage from these hammers, I can put this Mourngold to the ground, not have to worry about him too badly. So that pretty much makes up my move phase. So with move phase over with, we go directly to the shooting phase. And as you can see in the shooting phase, the shots from my adjudicators actually did a pretty good job against the Mask of Red Death. I killed almost everyone in that unit except for one Hex Wraith, and that one Hex Wraith is still carrying a floating wound, so that was pretty impressive as well. At the same time, I also fired up with the Storm of Breath ability from my Dracoth onto the Morgul, managed to put 3 mortal wounds on him. Now, unfortunately for me, Morguls do get a 4-up ward save against mortal wounds, but unfortunately for Scream with the Emo, he failed all those wounds, so that kind of ended up working for me pretty well. So that makes it the shooting phase up here in the front ranks. And once again, my prosecutors show that they are mediocre at best. They do manage to put 1 wound onto Lady Oleander, so not much to be expected from the shooting phase on that part. So with the shooting phase over with, we go directly to the charge phase. As you see in this photo, my executioners actually made a pretty impressive charge. They actually rolled up 11 on their charge distance, so because of that, they do manage to surround and pile in around Gallobrae the Morgul, so these guys will be fighting it out in the combat phase here shortly. And my prosecutors also managed to land a long-range charge as well, rolling a 10, so those 3 prosecutors will now fight against Lady Oleander. And I'm kind of excited to see exactly what this lady can do in close combat. So in the close combat phase, as you can see in this photo, I actually did a pretty good job against this. I did manage to inflict 3 more wounds onto Gallobrae. 2 of those were mortal wounds because one of my paladins actually rolled up a 6 to cause those 2 mortal wounds. However, he did manage to fight back, managed to kill one of my my paladins as well, so that was kind of rough. But so far, pretty good exchange. This guy is close to being dead now. I got 6 wounds inflicted on him, and hopefully my paladins can kind of hold on to the next few combat phases and hopefully finish him off eventually, so that way he doesn't come to grips with any of my other forces. Meanwhile, combat between my prosecutors as well as Lady Oleander was disastrous at best. I only managed to inflict 2 wounds upon her. Oh, sorry, not 2 wounds. I only managed to put another wound upon her, bring her wound total to 2. But she managed to kill 2 of my prosecutors and also managed to put a floating wound onto the 3rd one as well. So that was absolutely terrifying to see that. Once again, my prosecutors are just not very, spectacular at all when it comes to combat. So with the combat phase over with, we go directly to Battle Shock. And with combined for the -1 leadership I get because of the Nighthaunts special abilities and the high roll that I rolled for my Battle Shock, my last prosecutor just fled off the battlefield. And because of Lady Oleander's special abilities, because of the Nighthaunts, whenever someone flees off the battlefield from Battle Shock, any hero within 6 inches gets a wound healed up. So now she's only carrying 1 wound now. So that was absolutely devastating to see that actually happen. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we go directly to the bottom of the turn for the Nighthaunts. So, the top of turn number 2, we go directly to the hero phase. Lady Oleander uses her command ability again to bring back another one of those Hex Wraiths that got killed and the Mask of Red Death. So now that unit's brought up to 2 members, even though one of them was carrying a floating wound. She also managed to cast her spell, which is, I believe it's called the Grief Stricken, I believe is the name of the spell. What it does, it gives you -1 to hit as well as -1 to your attacks. And she managed to cast that spell onto my unit of Paladins, so that's kind of rough as well. So now they'll have to be rolling with a -1 penalty, and they can only get 1 less attack than they originally started with, which could be pretty devastating because if I don't kill this Morgul quick, this guy could heal up and then cause some damage for the rest of my army. So that pretty much makes it the hero phase on this side. And as you can see, during the move phase, almost every unit within our army just moves up closer to engage my main lines. First of all, on the right-hand side, the Ghost Riders of Midian, they move forward 12 inches, skirting past my Judicators as well as my Liberators, managing to inflict 2 mortal wounds onto one of my units there, so managed to kill one of my Liberators and also put a wound on him. At the same time, the left-hand flank, the Mask of the Black Death, those guys did exactly the same thing, moving through my units of Liberators, which also caused another wound as well, which is why one of them is carrying a floating wound. At the same time, she also moves up the Mask of Red Death as well as the Ghost Knights of her gun, moves them up closer so that way they can get a really good charge off against my main lines as well. She also moves up Lady Oleander as well, just moves up her normal 6 inches forward, so that way she gets closer to where her Morgul Gallobrae is being engaged in close combat. And that pretty much makes up the movement phase for Scream of the Emo. Here's a close-up of the movement phase in the center lines. As you can see, managed to inflict basically 3 mortal wounds onto my Liberators. One of them is carrying a floating wound, killing the other one as well. The Spectral Hunter's ability that the Hex Wraiths have actually been improved in this edition of Age of Sigmar as well, so that makes them kind of deadly as well. And so that's where the layout of the movement is so far in the center. At the same time, here's a close of the right-hand flank. As you can see, she moves Lady Oleander closer to getting ready to engage my characters over here next to Gallobrae. And that pretty much makes up the movement phase for Scream of the Emo. In the shooting phase, my buddy Scream of the Emo activates Lady Oleander's Wail of the Damned, which targets every unit within 10 inches of the location of the character. And basically what ends up happening is that my buddy Scream of the Emo rolls 2d6 for each of the units that are within range, and for every with that total actually surpasses your bravery score, it inflicts D3 mortal wounds. So as you can see in this photo, I lost one of my adjudicators as well as one of my paladin liberators, and also put another floating wound on another one of those guys as well. So that was pretty devastating. At the same time, the Wail of the Damned also managed to put a wound onto one of my paladin retributors as well. So with shooting phase over with, we go directly to the charge phase. Now, as you can see from this photo, my friend Scream of the Emo just sends charging everything, charging 4 to my units. As you can see, he's got the Mask of the Black Death charging my Liberators on the left-hand side, the Ghost Knights of Gun charging in the front of my Liberators, as well as the Mask of Red Death charging to the right-hand side of my Liberators. And because these guys are ethereal, they do ignore terrain and moving over through terrain and through troops. So, my friend Scream of the Emo sends in his Ghost Riders of Midian and charges directly into my Lord Celestin on Dracoth. So because of that, now pretty much all my army is pretty much engaged in close combat as well. And to make matters worse, in the charge phase, my buddy Screw the Emo also charges in, what's her name, Lady Oleander, charges her directly into the back ranks of my Paladin Retributors. So now because of that, my Retributors are now facing 2 different people at the same time. So that's pretty rough too. So with the charge phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. And as you can see in this photo, the combat phase is absolutely brutal to see exactly the kind of damage these hex wraiths were causing in mass. They managed to chop down every single liberator except for one of them, and that guy is carrying a floating wound as well. The number of mortal wounds that this unit could put out whenever they roll a 6 they cause a mortal wound was absolutely atrocious to see exactly that happen. It's because of all the hex wraiths were attacking in mass. At the same time, the hex wraiths from the Ghost Riders of Midian managed to put 4 wounds onto my Lord Dracoth as well, Lord Silas on Dracoth. It was absolutely brutal to see that actually happen. Unfortunate for me, when I tried to counterattack with my Liberator, couldn't really do much of anything on that part. Same thing with my Lord Celestin, I just absolutely flood my rolls because the only bonuses he gets with his Tempestos hammer is when he actually charges. So that was absolutely brutal to see that happen. It was totally demoralizing seeing my Liberators get chopped up like that. Now, there is some good news. I did concentrate all the attacks of my Paladin and Retributors against the Morngul, so I did manage to kill Gallowbraid, which has felt pretty good to actually have that happen. However, not Lady Dominant, my friend Scream of the Emo activated Lady Oleander. There we go. Lady Oleander counterattacked with her combat abilities and managed to kill 2 of my Retributors as well, so I only got 2 of those guys left over. So because of that, now they're staying across Lady Oleander, engaging her in close combat. So with the combat phase over with, we go directly to the Battle Shock phase. And not surprising, my last Liberator that was left over just fled off the battlefield. He lost so many members of his unit that when he rolled a d6, whatever number I rolled, it would have automatically gone away. So because of that, he runs off of the battlefield. And because this occurred within range of Lady Oleander, the one wound that she was carrying does go away now because she healed that up. And that pretty much ends the turn for my buddy Scream of the Emo. He had a very successful turn number 2. So because of that, we go directly to the top of turn number 3 for the Stormcast Eternals. Alright, so that takes directly to the top of turn number 3 for the Stormcast Eternals. So during the hero phase, the first thing I do is I once again use my same command abilities as well. Staunch Defender for my units so that way they get +1 to their saves, as well as use Bless the Weapons onto my Adjudicators as well. At the same time, I also cast Healing Storm with the Lord Relictor, managed to heal 2 of the wounds that he was on my Lord Celestin. So because of that, now he's only carrying 2 wounds now. And that pretty much makes it my hero phase because I really don't have anything much left in my army. So because of that, we skip the move phase because I don't plan on moving and go directly to the shooting phase. As you can see in this photo, my Adjudicators managed to wipe out the last remaining members of the Mask of Red Death just from the combined shooting from my Adjudicators in that part. So managed to wipe out that unit off the table. And at the same time, my Lord Celestin on Dracoth also managed to use his Storm Breath ability and also kill 1 member of the Ghost Riders of Midian as well. And that pretty much makes it my shooting phase. So with the shooting phase over with, we go directly to the charge phase. And at this point, I realized the only way I'm going to win is by being risky and bold, so I decided to charge in my Adjudicators directly into the Ghost Knights of Gun. Hopefully I'll be able to fight that unit down to size and hopefully destroy them. So that's the charge that took place over here in the center of the table. And at the same time, I charged forward with Lord Grim, my Lord Relictor, directly into the Mask of the Black Death, and I engaged that unit in close combat as well. So with the charge phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. As you can see in the combat phase, it was pretty lackluster for the most part. This also encompasses the Battleshock phase as well. My Lord Solicit managed to kill one member of the Ghost Knights of Midian. They also managed to put a wound onto me, so these guys are pretty much stuck at a stalemate for the most part. At the same time, disaster struck. My adjudicators were unable to cause a single wound upon the Ghost Knights over guns, so that was pretty demoralizing. At the same time, though, they managed to kill four of my adjudicators just through close combat alone. The amount of mortal wounds these guys were dishing out was ridiculous. My buddy Scream with the Emo's dice rolling 6 like it was going out of style. So because of that, that was pretty demoralizing. The only good part was when I rolled for the Battleshock test, I rolled a 1, so because of that, my adjudicator doesn't go away. So insane bravery, yay! At the same time, though, on the left-hand side, I do manage to inflict one wound with my Lord Relictor against the Mask of Black Death, but they managed to put 4 wounds onto my Lord Relictor as well, so that was pretty demoralizing. Just absolutely terrifying to see all that happen. Meanwhile, combat between my 2 Retributors against Lady Oleander over here. I do manage to put 2 wounds onto her, and she also managed to put 1 wound onto me. So not great, but at the same time, at least I'm keeping her occupied from causing any further damage. And that pretty much makes the combat as well as the Battleshock phase on this one. So with that being said, we go directly to the bottom to number 3 for the Nighthaunts. Alright, so that takes directly to the hero phase for my friend Scream with the Emo. The very first things you see on this table is that my 2 Retributors that used to be there are now completely gone. And the reason why is because Lady Oleander used her Lift the Veil ability, which basically she can cause like people to die from fright from doing that as well. She also cast Arcane Bolt upon this unit as well and managed to kill my clouded Retributors. So that was pretty demoralizing to see that happen. And because things are pretty bad as well, she also uses the sand, her hourglass ability, using the grave sands. And what it can do is when you decide to use that ability, it either causes D6 mortal wounds onto a hero within range, or heal your character D6 wounds. So needless to say, she decided to target my Lord Celestant, managed to make this guy age rapidly, and just basically turn him into dust. So that was pretty sad to see that happen as well. And because Lady Oleander just doesn't quit, she also puts Stricken spell onto my Adjudicator as well, because, you know, having -1 attack as well as -1 to hit is all you need when, you know, 5 Hex Wraiths are staring down the barrel at one single Adjudicator. So, pretty successful hero phase for my buddy Scream with the Emo. So with hero phase over with, we go directly to the movement phase. I apologize, we skipped the move phase because we're going directly to the shooting phase because most of our forces are engaged in close combat. During the shooting phase, my buddy Scream of the Emo uses the Wail of the Damned ability again off onto my Adjudicator. Lucky for me though, my Adjudicator did pass his bravery test, so that was kind of nice. However, my Lord Relictor did not, so because of that, she managed to put the last 2 wounds onto him, killing him right off the bat. So because of that, now Lord Grim is now dead as well. So with the shooting phase over with, we go directly to the charge phase. And as you can see in this photo, pretty much my buddy Screw the Emo moves all of his Hex Wraiths to surround by 1 Adjudicator, and Lady Oleander also moves up as well to finish him off as well. And it's at this point of the battle that my actual Adjudicator ends up being the man. He becomes Chuck Norris and karate chops all of his enemies down and kills them all. Actually, I'm just joking. In fact, we didn't even have to really go to the combat or the Battleshock phase because needless to say, these Hex Wraiths just scythed my, my 1 lone Adjudicator to death, and because of that, every single unit on my army is now dead. And as you see, ladies and gentlemen, that takes us directly to the end of the game. It ended up being a defeat for yours truly because every single one of my units got wiped off the face of the planet by this Nighthaunt army. It was absolutely devastating to see that actually happen. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go directly to the after action report because this battle report is now officially over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
I thought about staying. They offered me the chance to lead them, to teach them, to be king.
Uh-huh.
But my place is here, so I swallowed the juice, said the words, and here I am.
Did you say the words right this time?
Well, maybe I didn't say every single tiny little syllable, no, but basically I said them, yeah. Basically.
Alright, so now it's time for the after action report. This is the part of the battle report we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for the next time that we do battle. This is the after action report for Age of the Realms, battle report number 33, and ended up being a major defeat for Commander CheapSkate. So let's go and talk about the victory points real quick. So in the end, my friend Scream of the Emo managed to earn 63 victory points, and I managed to pull off 24 victory points, and that was absolutely brutal, the difference that took place. So basically saying my opponent Scream of the Emo won a major victory. In the end, my friend Scream of the Emo, he lost Galabraid, his Morangol, as well as the members of the Ghost Riders of Vergun, and that's pretty much about it. I, on the other hand, lost Lord Ios of Azure Earth, Lord Grimm, the Executioner, the Judges, the Jury, as well as the Witnesses. Pretty much my entire army. So in the end, Nighthaunts are absolutely terrifying in this second edition of Age of Sigmar. They are wicked fast, they have high rend on their weapons, and they also have good defense as well, because rending doesn't affect them, because they're made of magical misty stuff. At the end of the day, they have very powerful abilities, Lady Oleander, with summoning, magic, and shooting as well, so she's a very powerful character. And not to mention the Hex Wraith Spectral Hunter's ability is much improved. They get to cause mortal wounds on a 5-up, and as you can see, this battle report, they actually did a number chopping through my guys as well. Plus, the amount of mortal wounds this army can inflict is also really, really scary, in a good way, because Nighthaunts really don't have much in terms of, to fight really, because most of it's kind of spectral, and they have to rely on magic and things in the previous edition of Age of Sigmar. So having this mortal wounds ability, kind of makes sense, because these guys are ghosts and they can just reach in and kill your soul. So it's kind of cool to see that now for the Nighthaunts. Makes it a very competitive army, and it's kind of cool to see that happening. In the end, the reason why I lost this battle is because of hesitancy. I just hesitated. I just kind of was delayed. I fought too defensively. I should have been concentrating on eliminating one unit at a time, and I was out of range for most of my abilities, and that's because, once again, I divided my army up too much when I put some of those guys onto Riding the Lightning, so because it kind of hurt me. By playing so defensively and keeping my forces scattered like that, it allowed the Nighthaunts to quickly surround my army, as well as destroy me in mass as well. Also, not having a wizard in this army also hurt too, because I was able to unbind any spells. In the previous edition of Age of Sigmar, you could actually have a pretty successful army without having any magic users, because the ability to unbind spells was limited to only 18 inches. In this edition of Age of Sigmar, you can reach out to 30 inches and do it, so not having a wizard kind of hurts me, stopping from having the magic. So because of that, I might need to rethink my list a little bit and maybe add a magician or a wizard in there to kind of help balance that out. In the end, however, this was a very fun game. I fought against a really good opponent, and I'm looking forward to the rematch, because Nighthaunts are pretty awesome now, and I want to go against those guys again to see if I could fight against them. As always, you guys, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Google+, as well as Blogger for all the latest and greatest news about our hobby. That's good for this one, you guys. We are back once again with Age of the Realms. We'll be continuing to put up new Age of Sigmar battle reports for you guys. Until the next time, you guys stay classy. We will catch you guys on the flip side.